Hey, y'all, and welcome to another edition of the Unscripted Huddle, brought to you by the National Football Alliance. The NFA's purpose is to honor, improve, and advance the sport of tackle football. If you're the parent, coach, or administrator of a youth or high school player, you're in the right place. We aim to deliver an authentic voice regarding performance, safety, and the medical truth to support you and your players. My name is John Reagan. With me is Joe Rafter. Let's kick it off. Welcome back to the Unscripted Huddle, brought to you by the National Football Alliance, where we're working every day to honor, improve, and advance the game of tackle football. And it's great to be back with you. Here we are kicking off football season, one under our belt, more ready to go. I'm here with my co-host and good friend, Joe Rafter. And Joe, I'm going to let you take it and introduce Steve to everybody else, because if I do it, I might get struck by lightning.
Yeah, John, it looks like you were struck by lightning with that sunburn you have.
Well, red is okay. At least I still have skin, so I think I'm lightning safe, but thank you.
You're pretty crispy. Steve, thanks a lot for being here. We're thrilled to have you. As John was kind of introing you there, look forward to you sharing a little bit. First question, share a little bit about, your life story, your background, and what led you into the two roles that you have today that you're here talking to us about.
So I grew up in San Mateo, California, and actually attended Aragon High School, where I am the current athletic director. And I actually intended to coach football and baseball and teach history my entire career. And my first job at the middle school level, there was an opening to run our small athletic league, and I took that. And I'll back up a little bit. The only job was in physical education, so I got a credential for that. And so I just took a job because I needed a job, and they needed somebody to run this little 4-team league and to be the athletic director of the school. And so I did that at a middle school for 2 years, and I liked it, and to be blunt, I was pretty good at it. It fit my skill set, and I played 3 sports in high school, and I grew up in that era where during the summer we didn't play travel ball. So when baseball season ended, we went to the rec and played tennis, and we swam, and we played whatever we could get our hands on. And so my exposure and appreciation of all sports kind of, I think has helped me become an athletic director. So when or in my job as an athletic director. So when I went to the high school, when I got a full-time job at the high school, I taught and coached there for 4 years. And then in my 5th year, I became the athletic director. So
what did you coach in high school?
So I coached football. I was the head football coach from 2000 through 2023. I was also the head track coach for a couple of years. I coached swimming, some softball, badminton, actually. And so kind of as the athletic director, if there's a gap, if something's not filled, you step in and coach it. But obviously my first love in coaching was football. It was, I started... I don't want to, get stuck on the timeline, but, I coached it for 35 years at Aragon High School. Some of that while I was teaching at the middle school also, and before I got the full-time teaching job at Aragon. And so I spent, so this is, again, my 30th year as athletic director, and I was the head coach for 24 years and 35 overall.
I'll tell you what,
that's
Joe,
awesome.
It is. I tell you what, Joe, it brings up that mindset that when you say 30 years of coaching, 30 plus years of coaching, you don't choose to coach football; it chooses you. And,
I agree,
and it pulls you in. Now I got to go back to something here, though, Joe.
Yeah.
Do you remember the days, both of you, when school ended? Mom was mad. Now, don't take me wrong. Assuming Mom was at home, Mom was mad because you were home for the summer. And so you walked out the door with a bat, a ball, a glove, a basketball, a football, or you rounded up the neighborhood to figure out who was going to bring what. Yeah. And you left. You came back for lunch, and then you were told, get out of here and don't come back until streetlights come on.
Yeah, my parents didn't have to kick me out. We were wanted to do it, and she would look at me funny if I was in the house during the summer, and
Right.
it was it's interesting. I always felt like I had this unique upbringing and was very lucky. But we lived in a neighborhood where we had a rec center which had a pool and tennis courts, and then we had a school, elementary school nearby. And so when we left for the day for the rec, I couldn't tell you what sports I was going to play that day. I know I'd swim, and I'd probably play basketball in the gym. And would we play baseball at the elementary school? Would we play football? And this is a politically incorrect term, but if we had 3 people, we'd play a form of Indian baseball, if you remember, where you'd like close left field and you do that. And
So now if it goes over there, yeah.
yeah, and in terms of repetitions, I'm going to kind of talk about baseball for a little bit. I think there's nationwide kids can't hit baseballs anymore, and pitching has gotten better. But I think about the strikeout games we used to play during the summer, just with a tennis ball against a wall, and I think about how many reps we got. And as we're talking about football coaching, I think we're going to talk about reps a lot. Is just the number of reps our generation got, whether it was playing baseball or, think about this as it relates to football. When we played organized tackle football, by the time we did that, how many tackles had we made on the playground? How many times had we, learned how to protect our head, had to stick our shoulder in, and wrap? And so I think a lot of times when I coach football, I was asking someone to tackle a kid for the first time in their life. And so it was, so I know I'm going to sound old, but those were the days. And,
No
You're in
doubt.
good company. You're in good company when it comes to being old.
That's right. That's right.
Steve, tell us a little bit about your role with the Central Coast as well.
So when I started as an athletic director, I was right away. Was on the athletic directors advisory committee. Shortly became the vice chair of the athletic directors that serves just as an advisory committee to the board of managers, who are the principals who make the bylaws. And then I got on the board of managers, which is kind of like being in Congress, right? We're the ones who make the laws that our section goes by. And then eventually I was nominated for the executive committee. And once I was on the executive committee, which kind of acts like the board of directors for the section. Yeah. And so I became vice president and then became president of the Central Coast section in 2000. And that my term ended this past July 1. And so now I'm past president, and I am also now at the last CIF meeting, California Interscholastic Federation, was elected to the CIF Executive Committee. And so I've enjoyed, part of the reason why I'm no longer the head football coach is I found myself gravitating towards the athletic governance, and just became fascinated by that, and found that interesting work and important work to do.
Right on, Steve.
Steve, did you fire yourself? You're no longer the head coach. Did you fire yourself?
I'll tell you what. The number of Friday nights where I said to somebody, "I think I'm going to fire myself." I mean, how many times do coaches say that? I mean, coaches who are also athletic directors, we've all said it. No, it was just time. It was, like I said before, when I started to show a little more interest in the governance I just hated the feeling that I might be cheating the football job. And with all due respect to all other sports, if you're not all in, and it's impossible to do. And even if that wasn't the cause of us losing a game, I beat myself up. I mean, I was, and it became hard. My wife noticed and there's research about this, as you get older, the losses become harder, I beat the heck out of myself. And every time we lost, and it's like it was time.
There's a whole show to be done on that, Joe, and that comes from those people that and recently has come out and in reporting and news articles and stuff about even Scotty Scheffler recently, right? The thrill of winning doesn't even approach the agony of defeat. So, well, with that in mind, let's take us a second down here if I can.
Okay.
And so 3+ decades as a football coach, you've studied the game, you've studied coaches. You've said, this is the guy I'm going to follow, or this is the offense or defense that I'm going to run. So a Mount Rushmore of high school, college, or professional football coaches, your choice. Go anywhere with it. And a Mount Rushmore, which is 4, right, Joe? No, I'm just kidding.
4.
That's a fantastic
or as many
question.
as many as you want to name.
So, and right away, the first name that comes to mind, partly because of his philosophy of coaching kids and the offense he runs, is Mark Speckman. He invented the fly offense, and so I heard him. He's a gifted clinic speaker. He's extremely funny, very kid forward, right? Knows how to deal with kids. So I would say he would be one, and I would I could email him, text him, and ask him specific questions. When he was the head coach at Willamette, I went up there to the fly clinic one time. So he would be one. As someone who grew up in the 80s, Bill Walsh would be definitely up there. Just how revolutionary he was, and not so much that I adopted his pass game philosophy when I became a coach, because it's extremely complicated. But he thought differently, and he dared to have even practice habits. He dared to have the people go in helmets, one of those two-a-days. He dared to have less contact than some of the other coaches. And I was fortunate. And I'll lead to my third, my predecessor, Britt Williams, who sadly passed away in 2021. I remember being a junior in high school, and in two-a-days, he says, "Okay, guys, we're going shorts in the afternoon." And I was shocked. Everybody was shocked. And so it was, Britt Williams was a inside linebacker and guard at USC. He was a captain at USC. He was one of the toughest people I ever met. So, and who loved physical football, but that made just the fact that Bill Walsh was able to say, okay, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So I think he was a huge influence. So with Britt Williams, I think he was also the way he dealt with kids, the way he communicated with kids and spoke to kids, and so I think he was a huge influence. And I would say that I was kind of a sponge. Is that I always felt like I held this philosophy that I could go to the worst high school football program in America, spend 2 hours there, and pick up one thing. And so that's why it made it hard to kind of single out specific people. But I guess since I'm in the Bay Area, I'll tell you, a guy who's on my Mount Rushmore is Jim Harbaugh, and he is. He's obviously people call him eccentric or whatever. What you see is what you get, and I think what was fascinating about having him out here is that out in the Bay Area, Stanford lost to UC Davis, and 2 years later they beat USC. And so the way I think I liked his offensive philosophy. I believe that power is God's play, and that it's a play that everybody should run. And that's a phrase when I was like a recruiter from up north was coming down and they said, "You have a tight end? You have a fullback?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you guys run God's play?" I go, "What's that?" He goes, "Power." I go, "Absolutely." I mean, two of my favorite wins, I put my play sheet away and just ran it into our own boundary so I could see everything that's going on and just say, we're gonna take the air out of the ball and kill this game. So,
right on, Coach. Follow up on your comment about Britt.
yeah.
You mentioned the way he communicated. He's on your Mount Rushmore for a lot of different reasons. One of the reasons why was the way he communicated with the kids. What did he do in your mind? What was so special about the way he communicated with the kids?
This is going to sound extremely simple. He was respectful to them. He spoke to them. If they did something wrong, he was a teacher at heart. He knew, and he was very smart, and he knew that just screaming at them or insulting them wasn't going to get the outcome that he wanted. And when he was the head coach at a time when we didn't worry about football numbers and the kids weren't ultra sensitive. So he wasn't afraid that he was going to turn kids off to football. He just felt like that was the best way to teach.
Right on.
Now, he had a way that if you step too far, the best comparison I would make is he was Clint Eastwood. Is that when you pissed him off and you went too far, he said something to you in a way that would make you freeze and go, okay, it's time to do exactly what you're supposed to do, or else it's not going to be pretty.
It's awesome. I've had coaches like that too. The best coaches are teachers. Right?
Yeah,
you're fundamentally teaching the sport. Another question, back to your Mount Rushmore. The question of contact, right? How much contact is needed, right? I think the answer is it depends, right? Because there's so many dynamics. But what are your thoughts? Because there's if I were to try and have a polarizing conversation,
right.
On one hand, you got to have full contact for 2 hours of practice 4 or 5 days a week. There are people who think that way. On the other hand, there's 20 minutes. The laws in California, 30 minutes twice a week.
Twice a week, yeah.
Yep.
Or is it 40?
Right.
I think it's 45.
It's 45. It's 45
It's
twice a week.
45 twice a week. And it was funny because I was on those committees and voted on those when it went. I remember it was an hour and a half twice a week.
Yeah.
And then the very next year they cut it to 45. And the feeling amongst the football people was, cut it again. We don't care. I mean, because at the time, this is when we really started to worry about numbers. And my feeling was that my philosophy always was, if I go to the blackjack table and I lose $40, so be it. But if I lose $40 on the way to the blackjack table, then I'm being carried, or I did something wrong, or I did something stupid, right? And so that's the $25,000 question: is how much is enough? I would say this is, you have to prepare the people for the contact, and I would go, when you're doing it, you have to do inside run, and I think it's most important for the linemen, just because if you don't have it, someone's pad level could be horrible as a defensive lineman or offensive lineman and not know it. And I think that's the greatest reward with the least amount of risk, because they're not that far away from each other. It's pretty close contact. And I think as you move, as the players get further apart, right? So I would say the linemen have to do it, because if you can't, if there's something wrong with your run blocking or your pass blocking, and you don't know it until you play a game, that's a disaster. So I think that should be your most contact. Then a little, and as you get further away, where you have linebackers taking on pulling guards or fullbacks and ISO, or taking on a kick out block on power, then that is not as much as the lineman, but more than what your DBs would have. And so that's kind of how I would phrase it. Is I think for the front, you have to have it, or else you won't be able to know if you can run the ball or not, or protect the passer. And then with the DBs, we always talked a lot about. I played rugby for 11 years, and in missing a tackle in rugby is like shortstop dropping a pop up. It's like it just should not happen. And if you're a DB, it's like I don't need a big hit. I says we need the guy down, because this is high school football, and if you get him down, then that team has to huddle up and execute again, and to get in the end zone. So that's kind of my philosophy on contact, and and that's what we tried to do.
John, I lost your audio.
Can you hear me okay? We good?
Yeah, we got you.
So, sorry, that mute button gets me in trouble every time. 2 quick comments, and I'll let you take us to third down. But one, inside drill is important, because you can't practice God's play if you don't have inside drill.
Right.
So quick story on that. When I was coaching, when I was coordinator at Penn, we were playing Brown. It was halftime at Brown. We were up, but barely up. We weren't playing and I just challenged our offensive line and our offense in general. I said, listen, I'm not going to call a single pass play the next drive out until I have to, if you guys are okay with it as a team, as a player. I challenge the players. And,
right.
Rob, yeah, let's do it. Come on, coach, we got it. We ran power 7 times in a row and scored a touchdown.
That's so awesome.
I'll say this: we did it without a tight end sometimes, and we did it without a fullback because we were a one-back spread team, but we still ran power. So,
okay.
And second, small world. Mark Speckman was the offense coordinator for the last 2 years after he left UC Davis at Clarion University.
Right.
Which is the first time I ever talked to anybody about the fly offense. I was already out of.
Yeah.
I decided to get out of coaching. I was already out, but he was coaching with one of my very close friends, who was the head coach at Clarion University, and Raymond Monica. And so I'm giving a shout out to Clarion University and Raymond Monica right now, and it is a small world. But
yeah.
What he did with the fly sweep and everything off of it, holy cow! What a revolution to high school and college football, in all honesty.
I'll tell you, it's a lot easier to run power if that outside backer has to worry whether he's going to get reached or kicked out. I mean,
that's right. Or if the ball's going to go around the edge. That's right.
Right. So,
no doubt.
Steve, most of my football experience has been at the youth level. I got 5 years in high school and about 15 or so at the youth level, and I've run the single wing.
Oh, that's yeah.
I've run whole games where I called 3 plays the entire game.
That's
power left, power right were 2 of the plays.
Yeah,
I just love it.
That's it's, and I'll tell you, there's growing pains and new head coaches have to go through, where they have to learn that the shorter your play sheet is, the more effective that you're going to be, and they might see they'll try to impress themselves, or they'll see something that's like, ooh, we should run this. It's like, man, you're taking reps away from other stuff, and so that's there's a lot of expensive plays out there in terms of time, and then if you don't use them enough, then it's just like, what are you doing?
Right.
No
totally.
doubt.
All right, so, should we go to third down, John?
Let's move on. Yeah, let's go to third.
So, Coach, with your, if we added up all your years of experience as an AD and as a head coach, you'd actually be older than John. So, from your perspective as an AD and head coach and your involvement in the CIF, what are the most challenging considerations with respect to running a high school football program in the state of California right now? Like, what do you think of the things that need to get done, or the obstacles, or even the opportunities that are in the way of kind of growing the sport and helping it to become a better version of itself?
So I think one thing and this is this sometimes surprises people, is I think a thing that keeps some of the programs that are kind of on the verge of not carrying football. And we have some demographic challenges in the Bay Area specifically. Silicon Valley, our demographic has changed, right? And so there's some communities that aren't what you would say are not your typical football playing communities. With that said, I think if people in my position create good competitive situations, it'll help prevent kids leaving the sport. And it's, a lot of, there in California, the championships are strength based. So it's not geography based. And, the way we organize our leagues, in our section, they'll meet at the end of every year and say, does school A still belong in this upper league? And if not, let's move them down to school B. And so, a few years ago, I was one of the main people, and I'm proud of it, to be quite honest, about merging two leagues, our league of 18 and the SCVAL with 14. And we were okay with 18. We had 3 divisions of 6. We're okay. But the SCVL was horrible. They had 4 really good teams and then 10 that really can play at that level. So you always had 3 schools wrestling way out of their weight class, if you will. And those kids would look at the schedule. They'd say, okay, we're in the De Anza. They knew who they were playing, and they would say thanks, but no thanks. So I think one of the things that athletic directors and leagues can do is try to create good matchups. So the kids, every time a kid walks on the field, they said, I have a chance, right? There's always going to be that 1 or 2 games on the schedule because of whatever reason, crossovers, traditional rivals, that it's not a good matchup. That happens, and you can't avoid it. But I think overall, it's providing good matchups. And I think I think in the teaching of the sport of football has to stay good, and there has to be a lot of patience with a lot of these kids because it's hard. The sport it's not, as you know, when people ask, how come wrestling's down? How come football's down? They're looking for some really scientific or fancy reasons. It's like, because they're the hardest sports.
Yeah. And
it's with all due respect to the kids who run 46 miles a week or whatever, it's different. And so I think we've been hurt by, in our area, we had a, robust Division II football conference out here years ago that doesn't exist anymore. And that's where a lot of our coaches came from. They played at Santa Clara, St. Mary's, San Francisco State, Hayward State, Chico State. And they'd stay into coaching. And yeah, we don't have those programs anymore.
John, I want to take one of the things that Coach said about creating competition, and I'm going to pivot a question over to you. So, Coach is talking about competition between schools and teams and making sure there's parity, right? How do you take that same concept and bring it into a practice? What are your thoughts on tips and tricks on that one?
Sure, I think the reality is one. The first key is to bring competition into practice, right? Because I think too often it doesn't happen, right? It's set up to coaches set it up to teach a technique, to have you master, have players master that technique supposedly, and then go show that they, completed that technique. And it's not about competition necessarily. And I think what you end up doing is you end up losing the players' own evaluation of themselves in executing that technique, right? Because it's one thing for me to say, hey, listen, when you go to run a B-gap double team, you need to step with your inside foot. Second step needs to be right through the crotch. We need to be hip to hip. We need to drive that thing forward. But saying that to somebody is different for you to execute it, Joe, than it might be for me or Steve to execute it. Mm-hmm. So when you just set it up in technique, you lose the concept of that player learning how to compete through that technique, right? How to make it right for themselves. So I think you have to, long-winded, to set up the competition piece of that. And how do you set that up? I think there's a ton of different ways. I think it's really hard and difficult internally, based on time more than anything else, to say that it's going to be competition that is on an equal level necessarily, right? Because it's hard to say, hey, we're going to spend our whole time with our first team offense running against our first team defense. Whether you're at the collegiate level, where you do have a first team offense or a first team defense, or the high school level, where you might have a first team offense and 8 of those 11 are playing on defense as well, depending on where you are, right? Or you're at the youth football level, where you're at the level where your first team offense is your first team defense with your quarterback playing free safety, probably. So I think it makes it more difficult. I do think that reality is you just shorten the space, you shorten the time, and you create that competition, whatever that may be. But I do think it's important, because it's probably the one thing, you have heard me offline talk about this, but competition is probably the one thing I think players, we think it comes most naturally, but it's the ability to lose and move forward is not something we're teaching in society right now. The ability to lose and find a new home, that's what we're teaching right now in college football. And again, I'm taking it to college football. But maybe in society in general, right? If I'm not as good as so-and-so, then let me go somewhere else where I might be somebody
Go play a different sport.
Yeah, or go play on a different team, or go play somewhere where I look better than what I actually am, because it's all about appearance, right? So probably wasn't the intention for me to take it there, but I guess I did.
So good. So from a youth level, what I would say is in coaching youth, I'm always looking for my A players, my B players, and my C players. Right, my A players are just really athletic, great attitude, aggressive, right, and getting an A player going against an A player, right, especially at the youth level, especially if you have a first year player, right. And I've had first year players who are A players right out of the gate, but when you get an A player and a C player lined up on a youth field, it's a nightmare, right? And
it's a nightmare at any level.
Yeah,
that C, fair enough. That C player is just going to have a horrible experience, and he's not going to learn anything. So I in teaching, the other point, teaching competitiveness, right? It's not hand techniques and all that and foot placement. I completely agree with you, but how do you create a competitive environment in practice so that these kids start learning, overcoming adversity? You give them a little bit of difficulty and they overcome it, and so the B player becomes an A player through a lot of hard work.
John, I'll speak for a second. I found that at the high school level, that this happened more in individual time, in individual periods. Because as we're talking about the numbers, like you're right, we could not, way back in the day, we couldn't probably set up an offensive line versus a defensive line. There was a few years where we had that luxury. Now, because you don't have that numbers, in a team period, you really won't get it. But you can go good against good on pass rush, good against good, inside run drill with 2 guys versus 2-on-2 or 2-on-1. And obviously, when the receivers and DBs go, there's a lot of one-on-ones. Even if you're a zone team, even if you're not playing a lot of man coverage, I always was taught, zone, cover 3. Eventually, you play man-to-man against the guy in your zone, and you have to compete.
Right.
And so that's the. So I think that's kind of where, like, I would say, every now and then, if we had the right numbers, we would do a little 11-on-11 live for like 5 plays, right? And I'd hold my breath and go, God, nobody get hurt, right? And then, but I think for us, it was individual time.
And I'll say this, Joe. I'm not going to knock the coaches that set up the competitive 11-on-11 situations or the 7-on-7 or whatever it may be. But I think too often, just in general, those become more about the scoreboard than the individual winning his battle in the game. But yet, we sit in the meeting room. We sit in this full team meeting room. We sit in the offense or defensive side of the ballroom, we sit in our position meeting rooms as coaches, and we say, hey, it's all about winning your one-on-one battle. And if 11 of us win our one-on-one battles, that's what really matters.
Right.
But yet we only keep score of the 11-on-11 battles.
Right.
And so, not knocking that coaches are trying to teach competitiveness with big team situations, but I think there's a lot to what's going on in individual, what's going on in one-on-ones, how you set your practice up, how you coach your players. Because I think that just challenging your players is a competitive nature. It's not just they have to play to win or lose against somebody else. It's how you challenge them and how you move those things. So.
And John, I think you guys understand. So you could tell when it's good versus good or whatever, when it's one-on-ones and it's live, because the kids are cheering. And when they're doing one-on-one, all of a sudden people are getting excited, and
No
you
doubt.
play a little, play up to 5, whatever. It's just going back to Coach Williams. I think it's good teaching, right? It's just it's the same thing in the classroom, right?
Yeah.
You can have fun and learn stuff at the same time.
I think you nailed it, Coach, when you said, individuals. That's the place where you get the best opportunity to teach competitiveness when you do the one-on-ones and and you get the guys, circling up, and 2 of the linemen are going after each other.
Yeah.
Whether it's a real technique or whether it's just a simple 2 men in the ring.
So, and I would say this, I'm going to sound old. With a lot of the young coaches, I think a challenge we have now that we, everyone's on Huddle and they can go on YouTube, and if there was a study about football YouTube things to watch, if they were watching the Wake Forest fly power option, watching scheme versus individual drills, I bet you the number of YouTube videos on scheme would outnumber individual things at least 2 to 1, right?
Yeah, 3, 4, 5 to 1. It's 75% or more, Coach.
Yeah, people will have, I have this great scheme. It's like, great, yeah, it's nice. It's like, okay, but now you have to teach the individual parts.
Right.
And that's where you have to get down into the details and actually have to have some knowledge, and that's harder. That's harder. I mean, it's not as like, whoa, this is really cool. It's like, God, this is tedious. We've been working on this first step for 20 minutes, and that's not, so.
One of my favorite pieces of advice, Coach, was a parent watched a Clemson football game over the weekend and came to me the next week at practice and said, "Hey, did you see that play that Clemson ran to score the 2-point conversion?
Yeah.
Why don't we run that play?"
Yeah. Oh yeah, those are great. Those are great.
My answer to that usually is we do. We do.
Yeah.
We
It just doesn't look like
we
that.
do. We need to call it more often. Oh, okay. Yeah, you're right. We probably do.
Funny.
So, Coach, I'm going to take us into 4th down here.
Okay.
It may take us further. I wanted to get into NIL a little bit. I'm probably going to not do that necessarily. Maybe we will here. Who knows what overtime brings? But if over the years, all right, 3+ decades, coaching AD work, what are some of the most challenging pieces that you've had? Because a lot of change, right? And this is where NIL takes me to, is a lot of change. What are some of the most challenging pieces, whether it's specific to your job at California or if it's general with what's going on societal, countrywide, that you've run into? And what are the most challenging parents situations that you've run into?
Okay. And I'll talk about the second one first, because you guys are not going to believe my answer. You're not going to believe my answer. Is that I don't know if I'm lucky or because I'm more experienced and have some credibility, but my parent problem at Aragon High School is minimal. It's like, I know that's not. It's interesting. It's a pretty academic school, and our school community just seems to find the sweet spot with being competitive, with being supportive, but having a sense of the appropriate place in high school. I would say our high school kind of has the philosophy, and John, you'll probably appreciate this, of the NESCAC conference. With the Amherst, Williams, Tufts, those guys.
Right.
Is that we're an academic area, right? And a high school coach in our area at our school could go 5-5 for 100 years, and no one would ask for him to be fired. Okay.
Well, I think that's a tribute, not being fired any part, but not having parental issues is a tribute to the culture that you've built there, and the culture not being just within football or within athletics,
Right.
but at the school, that there is an expectation, that everybody understands what the expectations
Yeah.
are. And yes, you have to live up to the expectations, but
Right.
We all understand what they are.
And so let me talk about the first one. I would say, again, even not just from when I played, but when I started coaching, what we have lost, probably as a society, certainly in our state, and certainly in our section, is the group of kids who went to elementary school together, went to middle school together, and said, okay, I'm districted to, XYZ high school. And they weren't very good last year. And the kids say, well, let's go. Let's go. It's going to be our turn. We're going to make it good.
Let's go change it.
Yeah, we're going to go change it. We're going to go change it. And the parents will go, this is our school. We're going to go change it. And you see it in what the people were talking about, NBA guys chasing rings. At the high school level, you have some players chasing I think exposure. Is that you'll have some of the higher achieving schools in our section they'll have like 7, 8, 9 guys signed. I mean, Modern Day has non-starters being signed and so forth. And just the lack of foresight and judgment of going to one of these schools and holding a clipboard is like, boy, this didn't work out the way I thought it would. And it's not just a private school thing. I mean, we have, most schools, all schools in California, if there's more than one high school in your district, you can choose which ones to go to. And so there's great imbalances amongst the public schools. And there are kids who live across the street from their high school, is because their high school isn't good already, they're not going to go make it good. They don't have that. And obviously we have transfer bylaws. In California, we're constantly trying to, in fact, that's a big discussion item in the CIF right now, is do we like our transfer bylaws? Are they too restrictive? Are they too loose? Do we want to do, and this is I think an important piece, is there's a philosophy or a thought that, hey, we have to react to, people are seeing college kids being able to leave with no penalty, and a lot of times chasing NIL money, and here we have some restrictive bylaws. I don't agree with that, and it's like, if we're an education-based athletic organization, I don't think anybody can say with a straight face that NIL and the easier transfer bylaws has increased kids' chances of graduating from college. That has not been good for their education. They've made money. The quality of football may or may not be. From what I've read, you get these guys. Your scheme better be inside zone and bubble screens, because you don't have time to teach them anything else. And versus the programs that keep kids for a while, now you can do more. But anyway, I think that is something that as our state looks at it, is going to say, okay, do we want to move away from where college has gone to, or towards it? And I don't think we're going to embrace it. That I don't think anyone's talking about that. But so I have the philosophy is like, we need to look and see what it's done to the education of college kids by having them transfer all over the place and go the other direction.
I love that angle, Coach. How does it affect the education, right? How does it affect their ability to graduate, their ability to get a job? Because most of these kids that are leaving college football, they're not going on to the pros.
No.
Right?
No, and I haven't looked at the numbers, but but it doesn't help there. I don't care whether you're a kindergartner or you're senior in senior in college, consistency in a school is good for you. And to always be moving around. I mean, graduation rates, achievement doesn't go up when you move schools.
Great point.
No, I would agree with that. I would say this. I mean, you look at a couple things. One, consistency in anything. Doesn't matter if it's football or athletics or education or business or anything else is always going to – a CEO leaves IBM, and I'm probably picking companies that don't even exist anymore, to go to another company, and it doesn't make him a better CEO. It's just a different environment.
Right.
And so, I think it's there's a piece of that. I think that the statistics are not going to change. It's less than 3% of a kid on a Division I FBS team is going to make it in the NFL, and the numbers go down from there, right? So,
Right.
FCS, Division II, Division III, the numbers are atrocious as far as making it. Not atrocious. I mean, it's how it should be, right? It's the elite of the elite playing on those 32 teams in the NFL. Changing schools doesn't make you a better player. Changing schools doesn't give you a better opportunity. It may give you more chance to play, but that doesn't mean it's going to make you have a better opportunity to be a better player. And so, you just go back to those things and go, and then now, how is the educational piece going? I asked an AD the other day, literally, bluntly, I said, listen, what is your APR? And here's an AD who didn't know the answer to that question.
Right.
Because at this point in time, they're like, we don't care. We got to figure out how to pay these players.
Right.
Now, eventually he will care, and because they don't want to go through the repercussions, and who knows if the NCAA will even be able to enforce that. But it's not helping someone become better educated, become a better football player, have more opportunity, just because I can. There's a lot of things that we all can do. Doesn't make us a better person or a better husband or a better father just because we can do them.
Right.
Right on.
Agreed.
All right, boys, we're just about out of time. I think I'm going to put a bow around this. Steve, thank you so much for sharing your 3 decades of wisdom as a football coach and an AD. It's been a real pleasure.
I could do this all. I love talking athletic philosophy, football.
Be careful what you offer. Be careful what you offer, Steve.
We'll have you back in no time.
Okay, appreciate it.
Well, best of luck this year, and
Thank you very much.
that'll wrap us up, John. Another unscripted huddle brought to you by the National Football Alliance, where we honor, improve, and advance the great sport of tackle football every day in America. We'll see you next show.
Well, that's it for this week. Let's keep the conversation going to help NFA honor, advance, and improve the game of football. Thanks for listening, and join us next time for another set of downs on the Unscripted Huddle.